Are you tired of playing small and ready to step confidently into your greatness and share your unique brilliance with the world? Well, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sabine, and I've dedicated nearly 2 decades to empowering individuals and leaders as they confidently navigate the twists and turns of life and career transitions. If you're seeking direction, connection, or just a little push to play bigger, consider this podcast your VIP pass to a community that genuinely understands your journey. Join me every week for candid conversations and practical guidance designed to help you navigate the challenges of life and business, foster a growth mindset, and cultivate meaningful connections. It's time to embrace your inherent power, define your unique purpose, and prosper in every aspect of your life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm excited to be joining you again for another episode of the show. So today I have, of course, another amazing female powerhouse. Letitia Clark currently serves on Tustin City Council as the Mayor Pro Tem and served as the city's mayor in 2021. She was the first elected to the council in 2016, becoming the first Black woman. She was first elected to the council in 2016, becoming the first Black woman elected in the city's 90-year history. Go, girl. She also works as the Chief Communications Officer for the South Orange County Community College District. She is the recipient of several awards for her work in the community and on behalf of women and girls, including the Obama Public Service Award, named Top 25 Women in Government by Governing Magazine, and 100 Most Influential People in Orange County, named by the OC Register. So I did not lie when I said we had another female powerhouse in the house today. With that, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sabine. So good to be with you today.
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. We are set up for a wonderful conversation. So before I get into, asking you questions and tapping into your genius, if you would, please walk us through your career journey, because you've accomplished a lot in a very short time. So I would love for you to share with us, what were some of the paths, the decisions that you made to get to this place?
So some of it is planned, and some of the detours in my journey kind of came from, some unexpected lessons. But to kind of give you the Cliff Notes version, born and raised here in Orange County, California, which you're a little south of us, but kind of know the area. It's about a 2% African American population here in OC. When I was growing up, it was a little higher, maybe a little above 6%. I graduated from Tustin High School, which we had the largest Black population at the time in Orange County at the high school, which was over 10%, just over 10%. So for those folks who are coming from, predominantly African American communities, those numbers probably sound, pretty terrible to you, but it had a hand in how I grew up and how I saw the world. But yeah, very used to kind of being the only one in many of my classes, but had an opportunity to go to Ghana, Africa, my senior year of high school with this group based out of Oakland, California. And it changed my perspective about wanting to know more about my heritage and where I come from. So then I elected to go to a historically Black college university. I attended Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans. And from there, it was really a culture shock for me, rather than feeling like all of a sudden I'm included, I'm with my peeps. No, I felt very isolated in the beginning, not knowing how to stand out, because I always, whether I liked it or not, stood out, growing up in Orange County. So figured my way out through going to an HBCU, but had an amazing experience, would not trade it, for the world, met lifelong friends. But from there, it was the first time, and I mentioned this because modeling and role models are so important. I thought I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to go to law school. I started school as a pre-law major when that major still existed. But then I was part of the pre-law club, and we were volunteering for candidates in New Orleans for different races. And for the first time in my life, I saw women who looked like me, who were running for Senate and mayor and judge and these beautiful Black women on these flyers, and I'm looking at their list of accomplishments and I'm thinking, I didn't even know this was a job that you could pursue, a career that you could, go after. And these are all, I just thought politics was for older white men, and I just didn't even know there was a space for women who looked like me. So after volunteering on a couple campaigns and seeing some success, I decided to change my major from pre-law to political science, and then started working for a council member, an African American female council member in New Orleans, my junior year of college. That led to a full-time job as a legislative aide for the city of New Orleans. And yeah, so then I felt like I was starting to get into politics. I thought maybe I wanted to be um, a legislative writer or something, behind the scenes. And then about a year into my full-time position, Hurricane Katrina was approaching the city. And I was pretty low level. I used to get donuts and coffee and answer the phones. And but then on the Saturday before the storm hit on that Monday, I was called down to City Hall and told that I needed to go to the ninth floor, which I never was allowed on the ninth floor. And I was there to help listen to the briefing from the mayor with the police chief and the fire chief and all of the city executives to talk about the plan that was not in place to address the largest hurricane that was about to essentially devastate the city. So all that to say, I lost everything that I owned at the time. I was 22 years old, lost my car, all my belongings in my apartment. But I stayed in the city to help with the recovery efforts, lived in a hotel for over 6 months and walked 3 miles to work every day. And it's still hard for me to eat off of plasticware because the water wasn't running properly. So we just ate out of styrofoam, boxes and ate off of plastic for months. But what I learned as a 22-year-old with no real responsibilities outside of myself was that there is a place for people who really care to respond in times like this, when it matters, when it counts. Because I realized it was the council and the mayor and all the local, service people that had to respond in that time. The governor didn't come until weeks later. The President Bush at the time, did a flyover. He didn't even land and talk with the people. So that experience kind of cemented the rest of my career, and that I knew I wanted to be involved in service. I knew I wanted to be in a place where I could make decisions on behalf of others because I understood the stakes and that they could be extremely high and just come from a place of service. So the rest of my career has been rooted in government relations, and being of service to others. I've worked in the nonprofit sector, in housing, and now I work for the South Orange County Community College District, working on just equitable educational opportunities for people in my community. And on top of that, when I eventually left Louisiana and moved back to California, I knew that I wanted to be able to serve in my local community, which is Tustin. And against all the odds and what people thought was impossible, I was elected second out of four candidates in 2016, becoming the first Black woman on the council. And then I ran again for re-election in 2020 in the midst of COVID and George Floyd, and was the number one vote getter out of 9 candidates, and then became mayor right after that election because we were rotating the mayor at the time. So yeah, my whole career and just activity professionally and in many ways personally has been rooted in service, but so much of that was shaped because of my choice to stay in a stay in the storm essentially, and be responsive, but learn so many lessons that have kind of carried me forward to where I am today.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. What an amazing journey.
Mm.
And I'm sure the 22-year-old self was not like, oh, wow, this is amazing that I'll be
No.
sharing on a podcast one day. But oh my goodness, talk about a life experience that like completely shifts
Yeah.
you and shifts your identity, or at least gives you permission to solidify in a very chaotic time. This is who I am, and this is what I'm about, and this is what's important to me. And
Mhm.
so kudos to you for riding through that storm and staying and helping with the recovery, and then using it as the catalyst, if you will, for to push your career, not just your career forward, but the community forward. That's amazing.
Thank you. Well,
Absolutely.
it's a lesson I try to, press upon my kids, on other people to not always look at every, disaster or a setback in your life as, oh, this happened to me, but trying to kind of reframe it and use that to let other people know, like, hey, I overcame this.
Mhm.
So let me explain to you my thought process in overcoming something really tough and how that can position me to show up better, to lead in a different way than you might see other people. And that's anything like divorce or a sickness or something, kind of using that to say, hey, I went through this. I had a mind shift in this process, and now here's my perspective on life or business or whatever after that process. And people, they really want to know that, okay, in tough times, especially if you're interested in leadership, we want to know that you can rise to the occasion, that you've seen some hard things in your life and you know how to, get past that. So for me, I have communication crises all the time. And people want to know, well, how are you not sweating? How are you not panicking right now? And I said, hey, I've been through a lot worse. We will get through this, and kind of being that calm in the eye of the storm is it has been very helpful in my career. And people look to me to be that steady leader. I found myself kind of honing on those same things that happened during Katrina, during COVID, when I was serving as mayor, and just remembering to be very communicative, being calm, and really focusing on the restorative part, already looking for restoration versus just kind of living in the chaos and not really knowing what to do, but already knowing, or at least anticipating, we will get through this. Let's start talking about the plans after we get through this, because I saw the same thing happen in Katrina. We eventually got through it, but where we fell short was not planning, for that restoration, not planning for us to actually get through the hard times. So it served me well over and over again. But like you said, the 22-year-old had no idea how well it would serve me later on.
Yeah, yeah. And so you bring up a point, there are a lot of leadership philosophies out there, but mine personally is that we are all born leaders, that leadership is an innate trait, part of our being, and we all have our own particular spheres of influences and the way that we demonstrate our leadership capability. And people like to think that leadership is, oh, when you're sitting on top
Right.
and things are going well and you're getting all the accolades. But I think it is in the adversity, not that we become leaders, but that
Mhm.
we find out the type of leader we are.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in the situation that you were in, especially with Katrina, like you found some core parts of you. So the compassion, the
Yeah.
service, the
Mhm.
things that were already innate to you, that
Mhm.
external situation allowed you to bring them out, and you're still leveraging them, and it's allowed you to be successful versus perhaps had you been placed in a position, right, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, you're the leader now, but you
Right.
never really tapped into, well, who am I
Mhm.
without the title, who am I without the authority or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It might have been a different journey and a different story. So thank you for highlighting that so well. And so that brings me to my first question, or to the next question, I should say, with regards to this conversation on power, and what that really means and what that looks like. So I'm curious, when you think of power, authority, and influence, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I love this question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me this question before, but you're so right in that these three terms are very different. And in this environment, we definitely interchange them and maybe inappropriately. But I do think they're all linked in a way. So power to me I think that's something, as you mentioned, leadership, I think that is innate, that we all have power within us, whether we know how to tap into it or not. I often hear people say, especially to women, don't give your power away. Don't let someone else, take your power. So to me, that really does mean that is something innate within you. You could have power without authority. You could feel powerful, um, uh, uh, and it may be for better or for worse. And I think it's just taking ownership of your own decisions, your own actions. That is power. Being in control of how you operate in this world, and whether that's on a small or large scale, to me that is power. So we see that exuded in either our professional lives or our personal lives. Us, you being in control of your own destiny, essentially your own thoughts, your own actions, and how you move in this world. To me, that is connected to power. Authority, I think, is something different, where I'm studying right now to earn my doctorate degree in public administration, and we talk a lot about legitimacy, of government. What makes a entity legitimate? And that's really what gives the leaders of that entity authority. It's something that's documented. So, a chancellor of my district, or a mayor may have authority to make certain decisions because there's something in writing, there's something, a procedure, or a protocol that gives that person authority, whether they have innate power themselves, whether they have influence. They have the authority to make decisions on behalf of others. So oftentimes, we I think people may need that authority in order to have that permission to make decisions. So that's very important, particularly if they have not honed in on that internal power. Sometimes I think what happens is people, they might have one or the other. You could have authority without having some of those other elements, or you lack the authority. There's a quote, I don't know if you've ever heard it on social media. Jill Scott says she had some radio interview, and she said, you can't tell me what to do if you can't tell me what to do. But if you can tell me what to do, then you can tell me what to do. And what she's trying to say is, if you do not have the authority to tell me what to do, then you can't tell me what to do. So sometimes people need others to have that authority in order to take direction. And sometimes a leader might need that legitimacy, that authority of a position, to be able to actually, effectively lead others. But I think really authority in the absence of the other terms that you mentioned doesn't really, it can't be effective. But in combination, it can be more effective. And I think influence is something that is very just socialized. We may have influence on others without even knowing it. It's, people modeling our behavior, modeling our words. I think I have huge influence over my kids, right, and my family, based on the way that we talk to each other, that we communicate, what kind of behavior we model at home. But I think influence is really just how people feel around you, how they are willing to model what you do, whether you're saying something very that's overt, or just in your actions. You have influence over people if they're willing to model uh, your behavior, or they're influenced enough by you where what you say or suggest or recommend, is followed, with attention to how you'd like it to be carried out. So, those are for our managers and our supervisors. That you may have authority and you may feel powerful, but if you don't have influence over your, employees, and maybe not even over, but with your employees, if you don't have influence with them, then it's really hard to get people to shift or make big changes. And they don't feel, like it's something obligatory where they just have to do what you say because you said it, but that they feel inspired, to do what you want, because they see how it works in your life, and they admire it, in a way. So I think that's more of what influence is.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that
Yeah,
breakdown.
I mean,
Sounds
it's such a great question. I never even thought about it before.
Thank you. So I was listening to what you're saying and I was jotting down some of the things that I took away from it. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you is that when it comes to power, that it is just it's almost like an internal state of being,
Hmm.
right? That we are powerful. Authority is almost like the external validation or credibility that is given to us that says,
Yeah.
okay, yes, you have power. But then influence is really our external environment, whether that be people or whatever it is, reflecting back to us how we're
Mhm.
demonstrating that power. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
sure. Like I feel like someone can't say, I'm an influential person. You don't get to decide whether you're influential. Someone else has to, feel like what you're doing is influencing, other actions, change, or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think you nailed it on the head in how I'm viewing, these three different terms.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for breaking this down. And so for those of you who are listening, I mean, you've heard different guests kind of break down how they see these three. And it's not about a right answer or wrong answer here, but I do want you to start to think about, how do you define these three for yourself, and how are you defining it in the way that you're showing up? As we were talking before, words have power. And so when we see power as what it's been in our society, right, very command and control, power over, it makes sense that a lot of women, when they hear power, they divert, or they're like, I don't, that's not me. I don't want to be
Yeah.
powerful, or I don't want to be that power in that sense. And the truth of the matter is, how someone exerts or demonstrates or embodies power is going to be different. And it's
Mhm.
okay to be powerful, and it's okay to own that you're powerful in whatever way is authentic to you.
Right.
And to Letitia's point, you will know how your power is being perceived by the behaviors of those around you, because they're going to mirror it back to you. And so
Mhm.
if you're around individuals, or if you have people reporting into you, or your kids, whoever, and you're looking at their behavior and it doesn't align, or it's not what you would want,
Yeah.
this is an opportunity to be like, okay, well, how am I showing up?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
am I showing up? Because I do believe that we're all reflections of each other in some capacity, whether it's the past
Absolutely.
self, the future self, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
along those lines, because power, we share the same philosophy of power being an inside job. It
Mhm.
takes work to maintain that
Yeah.
understanding, and it takes work to maintain our own awareness and acceptance of our power. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, what do you do for yourself personally, especially when it's chaos externally, for you to
Yeah.
remain grounded in who you are and the power that you carry?
Yeah, I think often about how many hats I have to wear, and I can feel very powerful in some settings and then, kind of give away that power in other settings. And what I try to do when I feel like that power is slipping away, I try to find meaning in everything that I'm doing. Is if that's an online meeting, or a walk around the campus, or whatever it is, trying to find some meaning in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, being a mayor is a pretty powerful role, or at least from my perception, right? So a powerful role, a powerful seat to be sitting in, and a great responsibility in many different ways. So I'm curious, just going through that process in a very very critical and tough time,
Yeah.
what support did you engage so that not only were you able to within yourself maintain your power, but to also, around you, making sure that you were influencing, or making decisions or making things happen through others, where I'm sure you were challenged and tested many
Yeah,
times.
that's interesting. For me, it's always been kind of creating or maintaining a small circle, of people who have known me for a very long time. But even like with family and friends, kind of keeping at bay those folks that are just kind of naturally negative. Um, it just doesn't work for me. I kind of need the cheerleaders. I know that my love language is words of affirmation, acts of service. So I have to hear, yeah, keep going. You're on the right track, or yeah, that was great. I saw that speech, or I saw this video. And I can take constructive criticism all day, but kind of where I struggle with people in my lives, if they're giving advice out of fear of for themselves. They're nervous about doing certain things, so then they put that fear on me. Oh, I could never speak in front of a crowd of over 200. You probably shouldn't go try to do that TED talk. It's just kind of like, well, that's your fear. And so, but I notice people, even with love and good intentions, they will put those fears on you to try to keep you safe because they're very nervous about venturing into certain areas, and they don't want to see you be hurt or embarrassed or kind of fall on your face, so to speak. So I just try to, keep my circle small, particularly in politics. That circle can grow so wide because people just want to, be around people that they may think are influential. And so I have to kind of warn always kind of talking to my kids, my husband, that politics allows for fast friends. People will want to be your friend very quickly, but as soon as you don't have that influence anymore, you will see that these folks don't all of a sudden don't want to hang out every weekend. They don't want you over for Friendsgiving, every year. And so just trying to I stay grounded with keeping people around who have known me before the position, before the perceived, influence and authority, but that just know who I am innately. And I think just really being intentional about being around positive people. And sometimes I think that I say that and I don't always get the best reactions, but I know it's what I need for me. Not yes people, but just positive people. Kind of the kids, they learn at school, folks who have a growth mindset. So if you're always thinking that, if an adversity comes, but you see it as a lesson, that's a growth mindset. So I try to keep those type of people, around in a tight, small circle that we maintain.
Yeah, that's so important. I was talking to another guest and we were talking about the need. It's not even an option, but the need to surround yourself with people who are at your level or above your level. And
Yeah,
another way to say that is, people who mirror you back to you. They
yeah. I left a job once because I had a boss that literally looked at me like I was a unicorn every time I came into the room. Like, and not in a good way. He just I know for him, and he came from like a small town in like middle America, and I know he looked at me often and was thinking, how I used to think he wanted to say, how dare you? How dare you walk in and be so confident? And how do you have a smile on your face every day? And how are you as a Black woman who, he wanted me to be just, I'm just so happy to be here. I just am thankful that I have this job and that you guys let me in this space. And there were things that he would say that just kind of clued into me. He could not make the equation work for him in his mind that because I was a minority, because I was the only person that looked like me at the job, how could I be so happy to be in this space and connect with everyone that didn't look like me? And so I had to leave the job because I said, I'm not going to be able to grow here. I might be able to survive, but I'm never going to be able to thrive under his leadership. So I had to leave. And it was one of the best decisions I made. But to your point, that is a real thing. And often folks don't even see it or have an option to do something different, and they just have to live in those spaces where they're seen as, unicorns, and they have to dim that light over and over again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna say I love that. I know y'all tired of hearing that, but like I love that. Yes, so many times. Oh my gosh, I could name so many situations of okay, yeah, I can survive. I can grin and bear it, and I can get through because that's what we're taught. That's also
Yeah.
a message that we're taught
Mhm.
very early on. But really assessing, can I thrive here?
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
that answer is no, then
Yeah.
no. And I've
Yeah.
only gotten to that place. I feel like there's still opportunities where I can revisit that, but I've only gotten to that place within the last few years of my
Mhm.
life. I wish the younger me had a mentor or had that lens or even the permission to
Yeah.
say, I can't thrive here. So it's time to go. Or this isn't giving me what I need. And so that actually dovetails perfectly into the next question is, as we're thinking about all of the lessons that we've had to learn the hard way and adversity that we have to overcome, I feel like we'd be doing a disservice if we just talked about like, yes, we made it and we're still
Yeah.
fighting without consideration of, okay, well, what does that look like for the younger millennials or Gen Zs or alphas and whatever other letter or name is coming after? How do we start? What are your thoughts on ways that we can start to instill this level of confidence, this level of ownership, this level of identity in
Mhm.
young girls and women so
Mhm.
that when they hit the ground running in whatever career path they choose or lifestyle they choose, that they're doing so knowing who they are without
Yeah.
having to go through 20 to 30 years and then relearning who
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things which we're just in an era where sometimes what I think are good lessons, I don't know if they're extremely popular, but because I know it helped me, you know, at least for my own kids where I feel like I have more authority, more jurisdiction, I tell them run to the hard stuff first. Don't be afraid to go through things that are difficult. I say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And why I say that might not be popular, because in this day and age, we're really promoting and advocating, make sure you are seen and heard. And if you feel uncomfortable, say something, and making sure that the environment is right and ready to embrace, the person who you are. My argument against that a little bit is you can't really figure out who you are until you've gone through some hard things. And so if the environment is always being adjusted to fit, your needs or your wants, then it's kind of hard to figure out, well, I need to overcome, this, talking to people or making public speeches or, doing something that's very analytical. That's not my strong suit. So I need to figure out how to overcome that. Just kind of running to these things that are difficult and make you uncomfortable, and then finding your a way of getting through that discomfort pretty quickly. And the more you do it, the quicker you're able to get through it. I mean, a good example I give my kids is I might seem like I'm fairly gregarious, outgoing, an extrovert, but there are so many times where I'm sitting in my car about to go to an event and I'm like, I don't know anybody here. I don't want to walk in this room. And so even I get, kind of nervous about that. But figuring out a way to get past that quickly and then meeting somebody, talking to somebody, and then, whatever fears I had, they dissipate, fast, and then I'm able to move on. But if I didn't decide that that's what I'm going to do on a regular basis, I would let that signal of fear or discomfort say, oh, I'm uncomfortable, so I'm not moving forward with this. This doesn't suit me, doesn't fit me. So I'm not going to, if I'm just an introvert, so I don't go to places where I have to meet people because that is not, who I am and things like that. Um, just learning that you can't learn more about yourself that until you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I kind of try to promote that for young people, that you do have to find ways to overcome discomfort and just run to it and figure out a way how you get past it rather than avoiding it in your life, and try to do it early in life so you can kind of learn those lessons and then move on. So that's my advice there.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so something you said to spark a thought for me, and then I'll go into the blitz section here is really around the getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think, a lot of times people interpret that different ways. And so I think that that's such a powerful thing to start teaching kids now. I mean, yeah, we can't predict what that thing will be for them, but I think all of us as adults, we can look back and see it was the uncomfortable situations. It was the situations where we thought, okay, we were down and out that
Yeah.
not only helped us advance, but it helped us go back and heal some things that needed to be
Hmm.
healed.
Yeah. It's not always a red flag. And so finding some discernment of, not going into dangerous, situations, but always not running or fleeing when something is difficult, that,
Yep.
you deciding yourself, okay, I'm going to take on some challenges. It's really uncomfortable for me, but I'm going to take it on because the reward of finding out that you can overcome and do hard things is going to serve you well in your career, in your personal life, all those things. So if we learn those lessons early, maybe we can take on some challenges that aren't devastating, to our life. Maybe we can experience some adversity that isn't going to set us back, 10 years, but it's more of a bump over the road. And then you're able to have smooth sailing, for an elongated period of time, but to not be so fearful and or letting those fears of others, be placed on you where it stalls you from just learning some key lessons in life.
Yeah, because life, whether, at some point you will not be with your parents and life will life.
Life
Um,
with life.
life will life, and you
Uh-huh.
will learn the lesson. So rather
Yeah.
have some tools earlier on. And so
Right.
I want to be respectful of your time here and run through the split session. So I have three questions for you.
Sure.
It sounds like you've shared some, but I want to give you the space. If you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her a piece of advice based on what you know now about you and your experience, what might
Mhm.
that be?
To to dream, to give yourself permission to dream big and to speak it, to the practice of affirmations to me is so powerful. Don't limit your dreams. I just wish I would have even dreamed bigger for myself younger, just to have, all the good feelings of what it feels like to dream, to have an amazing dream. I mean, I think I was so focused on being like a realist and, being very pragmatic. And I wish I would have allowed myself just permission to do that more.
Okay, awesome.
Mm.
So as you think about when you're in your rocking chair and you are sharing your life with your great, great, great grands,
Yeah.
what do you want the legacy to be? What do you want the narrative to be?
So I fortunately get to think about that all the time. I mean, I think in office, I'm often thinking about what will be my legacy, what will people remember. And I think for the most part, I want people to feel like I was of service, that I was a servant leader, not a politician, that I was focused on making the community better for future generations. So making investments in things that didn't give me credit or didn't, they didn't contribute to my personal accolades, but they were sound investments in the future, of next generations. And I hope my kids will feel proud that their mom was someone who was focused on service and that it is just who I am. And thus I encourage it to be who we are, as a family, that it's not something that we do to get praise. It's just who we are. Giving to others, pouring into others is just what we do, so that that becomes influential and people kind of get that bug that, hey, service is just a part of our debt to being on this earth. Like if we all practice it, then the benefits will continue to just reap itself. So I just want to be associated with service, whether that's service to God, service to my community, service to my family. I think that's what I want my legacy to be.
Awesome. And then the last question here, and I know you have two books. I love the title, Mommy is the Mayor, but have there been any other books or a book in particular that you feel has been influential for you in supporting you in your growth, either personal or professional?
Yeah, I have this one I kind of relate to. It's called How Are You Really by Jenna Kutcher. It's all about being present and being very honest with yourself and asking, how you are, asking, or if you're going to ask other people, not that fake kind of, oh, hey, how you doing? Like where you really don't care, but actually caring how people are doing. And in order to do that with others, you have to first do it with yourself, really assessing how you're doing, rather than just going through the motions. So this book has actually helped me utilize some of those practices throughout my busy and chaotic sometimes life. So I love this book, and just the practices that I've been able to learn from it have been very, very, very helpful.
Awesome. So we will definitely include that in the show notes. How Are You Really
Yeah.
by Jenna Kutcher. And then, of course, I would love for you to share with the audience about your book.
Yeah. So two totally different books. Mommy's the Mayor came out with that when I was serving as mayor. It was inspired by my kids not even really understanding the role of a mayor in city government, but I also wanted to model a Black woman being a mayor of a city and having those illustrations and really doing some, touring a little bit, book signings and things like that with that book. I heard more from women and moms asking me, that question, how do you do it all? And having to kind of let them down easy that, I'm not doing it all well, but you don't have to. And realizing that what I've learned over time is that my professional life overlaps with my home life, and I've found a way to merge the two. The lessons that I've learned of being a mom, I've successfully transitioned to making me a better manager, a better supervisor. And I'm basically in Baby's Rules to the Boardroom talking about how we don't have to be separate in our lives, that the two can coexist. And if we're careful and we are present and we're listening, we can learn so many lessons from raising our kids that actually make us a better manager, a better professional, an asset in the workplace. And I often see women who are mothers they give themselves no grace, no credit for the lessons they've learned in raising their families. But this is more than just for moms. It's for caretakers. It's for, it could be for men too, but who don't give ourselves credit for what we do in our personal lives, how we lead in our personal lives, and figuring out a way to transition that to be, valuable and an asset in our workplace. And it's a lot about changing the narrative. I so often just feel like women are not given a lot of credit about what we do in juggling all that we do in our personal lives and how that can transition to the workplace. I had a baby while I was mayor and went back to work, and that probably was a one of the biggest struggles I went through, going back to work again, because I was at such a high level and then kind of having to take time and then go back. I found a lot of struggles in transitioning. So this book is for a lot of those women who are making that transition and nervous about how will I, merge these two worlds together.
Awesome. And I couldn't agree with you more that, so often we're quick to compartmentalize ourselves for what?
Mhm.
Like
Right.
we can't
Yeah.
compartmentalize ourselves. We will include those links in the show notes. And then last question, as individuals are listening to the show and they want to connect with you, they want to learn more, what's the best way to do that?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Uh, those
And
are probably the
LinkedIn.
best ways, but Instagram is Letitia C. Clark. But yeah, would love to connect. And LinkedIn, of course, that's where we met. But just Letitia Clark is how you spell my name. But thank you so much for having me. This was, kind of a shot in the arm, this discussion today, just to keep it going. It was such a fruitful conversation. And I learned some things. I mean, the fact that we talked about power, authority, and influence in the way that we did today. I've never done that. And so it was actually really, really enlightening for me. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And so for you guys who are listening, all of the links will be in the show notes. Please connect with her. Let her know that you heard her on the podcast. And I pray that you were encouraged by these words and these messages, and continue to be encouraged throughout the series. No one is going to give you permission to be powerful, and no one needs to give you permission to be powerful. You already are, and you are enough in more ways than one. So with that, we'll be back next week with another episode and another powerhouse. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you found today's conversation helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your life, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon and send me a message, or feel free to leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network, another powerhouse possibly, who you think might benefit from today's conversation. Lastly, as always, any links, any resources, or any upcoming training is included in the show notes, so be sure to check that before you leave today. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.